All right, welcome to another deep dive. You know how this works. You send us stuff that's got you thinking could be articles, studies, even a whole book, and we kind of go spelunking, right? We pull out the really interesting bits, the things you need to know. This time around, though, it's a request specifically from one of our listeners. We're tackling 13 reasons why.
Yeah, this one's a bit heavy. We've got excerpts from the book, just glimpses really,
Yeah.
but enough to get a sense of how intense the story gets.
So, right off the bat, the setup is pretty unique. We got Hannah Baker,
Oh.
and she's left behind this shoebox. But it's not just any shoebox, right? It's full of cassette tapes, 13 of them, each one, a reason why she decided to end her life. And there are rules, very specific instructions about who gets to listen and what they have to do next. I can't imagine the weight of that suddenly having to carry that kind of responsibility.
Right.
It's definitely not something you just shrug off.
Yeah.
The excerpts focus on Clay Jensen. He's the one who gets the first set of tapes. And the mix of emotions he's hit with. Confusion, disbelief. It's palpable. He knew Hannah, worked with her. There was even a moment between them, a spark. But now he's on this journey, trying to make sense of it all.
And to add to that, there's a map included, marked up with these red stars.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's more than just a random doodle. What's the deal with those locations?
It's like a roadmap, literally, to Hannah's story. As Clay's listening, she's directing him to specific places, places that obviously had some significance to her, to the reasons she's laying out. So it's not just listening, it's retracing her steps, reliving those moments with her. Heavy stuff.
Okay, so Clay's got the tapes, the map.
Yeah.
He hits play. What's the first thing he hears, and what kind of tone does that set for what's to come?
The instructions are crystal clear. You listen to all 13 sides, you pass the tapes on to the next person on the list, and you rewind. No exceptions. But then there's this underlying threat. Hannah made copies. If the chain's broken, her story goes public. Instantly, you feel the pressure, the consequences that hang over Clay, and everyone else will get those tapes.
It's like she's making sure her voice is heard, on her terms. What about Clay? What's going through his head as he's hearing her voice, listening to her reasons?
You can sense that he wishes he'd understood her better, seen what she was going through when she was alive. He thinks back to the times they shared, that one time they kissed, and it's like he's realizing he took those moments for granted. Hearing her voice now, full of anger and pain, it forces him to confront what he missed.
In her voice, from what we see in the excerpts, it's raw, right? A lot of emotions pouring out. What's the very first reason she reveals?
It's about Justin Foley, and it starts with a kiss, a first kiss at the rocket slide. Hannah actually describes it as a good kiss, better than she expected. But then Justin does something careless. He comes up with this list. Freshman class, who's hot, who's not. Completely made up, but you know how these things go.
Yeah, word gets around, reputations get made and broken. What effect does this list have on Hannah? And what's Clay's reaction when he hears about it?
Even though Hannah ends up on the hot side of the list, it starts to define her in the eyes of the other kids, especially the guys. It kicks off this whole cycle of objectification and rumors. And for Clay, it's like a wake-up call. He's seeing how easily these things can spiral, how much damage can be done by what some people might dismiss as harmless teasing.
And it wasn't just Justin, right? Alex Standell and Jessica Davis are involved with this list, too. What was their relationship with Hannah like at this point?
At the start of the year, it sounds like the three of them are pretty tight. Hannah, Alex, Jessica, they'd hang out at this place, Monet's Garden, a little cafe. They even had this thing they'd do, put their hands together and say, Ollie, Ollie, oxen free. Kind of like a signal when someone was having a rough day. But then the list happens, and it all falls apart. Jessica is put on the not list, understandably feels hurt, and it drives a wedge between them. It shows how fragile friendships can be at that age, especially with all the pressure and drama swirling around.
So this list, it may have seemed like a game, but it had some pretty serious ripple effects. What's next? Who's Tyler down? And what does he do to add to Hannah's pain?
This one's a violation of privacy, a big one. Tyler starts taking pictures of Hannah through her bedroom window, like a peeping Tom. She talks about the feeling of being watched, of not even being safe in her own home, the one place she should feel secure. The sound of his camera clicking, that becomes a symbol of how exposed she feels, how she's constantly on edge.
We're starting to see a pattern here, right? Hannah's trying to find her place, connect with people, but it seems like every time she takes a step forward, something pushes her back. Next up, Courtney Crimson. What's her role in all of this?
Courtney, she's all about image and popularity. Hannah feels used by her, like Courtney is just trying to climb the social ladder, especially when it comes to yearbook elections. Courtney insists on taking Hannah to a party, even though Hannah's not really up for it. And at the party, Hannah, maybe feeling manipulated, sets something up, so Tyler ends up photographing Courtney in a compromising situation. It's like she's trying to regain some control to push back against all the superficiality and manipulation she's surrounded by.
And what about Marcus Cooley? I think the excerpts mentioned something about a Valentine's Day thing.
Right, the Oh My Dollar Valentines. It was supposed to be a fun school fundraiser, mashing students up based on some survey they filled out. Turns out Marcus was Hannah's #1 match. But he stands her up at Rosie's diner, leaving her feeling completely rejected. Later, he finds her at the diner and makes some unwanted advances. Not cool. It reinforces that feeling that she's being seen as an object, not a person, and it just chips away at her self-worth.
It's like every attempt at connection just backfires. The excerpts also mention Zach Dempsey and something called peer communications. What's that about?
In Mrs. Bradley's peer communications class, the focus was on anonymous sharing, creating a safe space for students to open up. Hannah, in a moment of vulnerability, writes a note about suicidal thoughts. It's a cry for help, a desperate one. But the other students, they brush it off, some even saying it's just for attention. Awful. Later on, Hannah cuts her hair, a big change for her. She'd been getting these anonymous notes offering support, but after the haircut, they stop. It turns out Zach was stealing them, taking away that one bit of comfort she had. And it's especially tragic because Mrs. Bradley's class was supposed to be that safe space, that chance to get help, and it just failed her.
Then we have Ryan and the poem. This seems like another betrayal of trust, something deeply personal being violated.
Absolutely. Hannah had a poem in her notebook, something private, and she trusted Ryan enough to share it with him. What does he do? He publishes it in the school's newspaper, the Lost and Found Gazette, without her permission. It's humiliating, exposes her deepest feelings to everyone, and makes her feel even more alone. This one hurts because it was a direct breach of trust. Hannah shared something personal, and he used it for his own gain, completely disregarding her feelings.
Each of these events, they build on each other, don't they? It's like they chip away at her bit by bit until, well, the narrative shifts to a party, and this seems like a major turning point. Clay's involved too, right? What happens?
Hannah goes to this party hoping to connect with Clay, someone she's developed feelings for, someone she sees as different from the others. They end up in a bedroom, there's a moment between them, a real connection. But Clay, he's struggling with his own stuff, with the rumors he's heard about Hannah, and he decides to leave. He didn't mean to hurt her, but for Hannah, it's another rejection, another missed chance for the kind of real connection she desperately wanted.
And after Clay leaves, things take a very dark turn, a traumatic turn for Hannah. What happens in that room?
Sadly, not long after Clay leaves, Jessica and Justin come in, and then Bryce Walker. And from what we gather from the excerpts, Bryce assaults Hannah in the hot tub at the party. It's horrific. And it feels like the final blow, the culmination of all the hurt she's been carrying.
This is incredibly tough to hear, really shows how deeply these events impacted her. We then jump ahead, after the party. What's the situation with Jenny Kurtz?
Jenny gives Hannah a ride home from that party. On the way, they pass a down stop sign, and Hannah, she's really insistent that they report it. She understands how dangerous it could be, but Jenny brushes it off, keeps driving. Tragically, later on, that stop sign plays a role in a fatal accident. It's another instance where Hannah tries to do the right thing, tries to prevent something bad from happening, but it's ignored, and tragedy follows.
And as we get to Hannah's final tapes, what's her state of mind at this point? What leads her to make that final decision?
You can hear it in her voice, exhaustion, resignation. It's like she's gone through everything, tried everything to find some kind of connection, some support, and all she's found is disappointment, betrayal. She talks about ending her life, not with anger, but with a kind of acceptance, like it's the only option left for her, the only way to escape the pain.
There's a mention in the outline about a final brief encounter between Clay and Hannah, and then her meeting with Mr. Porter, the school counselor. What happens in those moments?
The last time Clay sees Hannah, they bump into each other in a hallway at school. It's quick, almost accidental. They both say sorry, but neither one really explains what for. It's like a missed connection, a silent goodbye. For Clay, it becomes this huge regret. For Hannah, maybe it's just another sign that she's alone. Then there's the meeting with Mr. Porter. It's heartbreaking. She tells him straight up she's thinking about ending her life. She doesn't want to die, but she feels trapped. And Mr. Porter, he doesn't get it. He fails to grasp how serious this is, how desperately she needs help. It's a system failure, a missed opportunity to intervene when she needed it most.
And after listening to all 13 reasons, Clay's left with all this grief, this guilt. It's a lot to process. What does he do? And what's Tony's role in all of this?
Clay's world is shattered. He's wrestling with the weight of what he's heard, wishing he'd acted differently. Tony, another classmate, was given the tapes too, and he becomes a kind of guide for Clay, a confidant. He admits he knew about Hannah's plan, even tried to call the police after she died, but he was scared, confused, didn't know what to do. In the end, Clay, understanding how everything is connected in Hannah's story, he mails the tapes to Jenny Kurtz, continuing the chain. He's feeling the loss profoundly, and at school, things feel different, heavier. The excerpts end with him seeing Sky Miller, another student who seems lost, alone. And Clay makes a choice, he reaches out to her. It's like he's trying to break the cycle, to prevent another tragedy, using what he's learned from Hannah's tapes.
This deep dive into the excerpts from 13 Reasons Why, it's a harsh reminder of how much power our actions have, even seemingly small ones, and how those actions, especially in a community, in a school, can build up and have such a profound impact on someone's life.
Hannah's story isn't about finding one single person to blame, one villain. It's about understanding how all these different behaviors, from careless words to outright cruelty, can chip away at someone's sense of self, their hope.
Listening to all of this, it's hard not to feel a lot of emotions, right? Sadness, maybe anger, a real sense of loss. That's the power of Hannah's story, even in these fragments.
These excerpts, they raise some big questions about responsibility, about empathy, the damage that rumors and bullying can cause, and how crucial it is to have support systems in place for anyone who's struggling.
Thinking about all of this, about how interconnected everyone's actions are, as Hannah's tapes show so clearly, it makes you wonder, right? What small changes can we make in our own lives, in how we treat each other, to build a more compassionate, understanding world? Maybe this deep dive has sparked something in you, a desire to explore the full story, to learn more. Whatever it is, thanks for joining us on this journey. It's a tough one, but an important one.